There he found a man named Aeneas, who had been bedridden for 8 years and was paralyzed. And Peter said to him, Aeneas, Jesus Christ heals you. Rise and make your bed. And immediately he rose. And all the residents of Lydda and Sharon saw him, and they turned to the Lord. Now there was at Joppa a disciple named Tabitha, which also means Dorcas. She was full of good works and acts of charity. In those days she fell sick and died, and when they had washed her, they laid her up in an upper room. Since Lydda was near Joppa, the disciples, hearing that Peter was there, sent 2 men to him, entreating him, Please come to us without delay. So Peter rose and went with them. And when he had come, they took him to the upper room. All the widows stood beside him weeping, and showing tunics and other garments which Dorcas made while she was with him. But Peter put them all outside and knelt down and prayed. Then turning to the body, he said, Tabitha, rise. And she opened her eyes. And when she saw Peter, she sat up, and he gave her his hand and lifted her up. Then calling the saints and widows, he presented her alive. And it became known throughout all Joppa, and many believed in the Lord.
Peace be unto you.
Alleluia. Alleluia. Alleluia.
Wisdom arise, let us hear the holy gospel. Peace be with all.
And with your spirit.
The reading is from the Holy Gospel according to St. John. Let us be attentive.
Glory to you, O Lord. Glory to you.
At that time, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, there is a pool with 5 porticos, called in Hebrew Bethesda. Under these lay a great multitude of people who were sick, blind, lame, or paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at certain times into the pool and stirred up the water. And then whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was made whole of whatever disease he had. A certain man was there who had his illness for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and perceived that the man had been sick for a long time, he asked him, Do you want to be made well? The sick man replied, Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. While I am coming, someone else steps down before me. Jesus said to him, Rise, pick up your mat, and walk. Immediately the man was made well. He picked up his mat and began to walk. Now it was the Sabbath on that day, and so the Jews said to the man who had been cured, It is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your mat. The man answered them, The one who made me well, that one said to me, Take up your mat and walk. Then they asked him, Who is the man who said to you, Take up your mat and walk? But the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn in the crowd that was there. Later, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, Behold, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you. The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well.
Glory to you, O Lord. Glory to you.
Christ is risen. Good morning. It's wonderful to see you. what I end up saying each Sunday shifts about from the time I think about these things to even up to when I read the scripture, because I'm listening to it and it's saying different things. At the food bank yesterday, there was a woman that we know well who came. She was one of the first here, and she had a t-shirt, a sweatshirt on with big bold letters that said, "No one sees me." I didn't say anything, but I looked at that, and it made an impression on me, because one of the things that stands out the strongest for me in this section we read today is the Greek. When Jesus asked the man, "Do you want to be made well?" the man says 3 words: "I have no person." 4 in English, but it's 3 in Greek. I have no person. That's an incredible statement. You know, we can casually translate it. I don't have anybody to put me in the water or to help me get there when everybody gets there for me. And it's not exactly that way when it's the way it's written. It's very clear. I have no one. I've been laying in this portico, 5 porches with a roof around in the sheep gate around this pool for 38 years. Now, this is a well-traveled place in Jerusalem. Theodore Mopsuesta tells us a very interesting historical point, that this pool at the sheep gate is where the priests from the temple washed the entrails of the sheep that were brought from the first of the flock in this pool to take them into the temple to use them. So you can imagine, you know, you think about how we walk under the Kuvutlian on Pascha. You know, we do that. We do many things that have a meaning for us. Can you imagine what the sick people in that, the homeless laying around there, would think about this pool that was used for the holy offerings to God, to cleanse them? And then, you know, once a year, then the waters are stirred and someone's healed. We can ask ourselves, wonder what water's stirred by an angel are. And this gets to be more interesting because this is from the Gospel of John, and John is always writing ordinary things that mean something way bigger than that. So let's have a couple of things in mind. Next week we're going to talk about the woman at the well. Well, that actually happens in the 4th chapter. And what is the key that Jesus introduces there just before this, where the waters are stirred? Do you remember? What is, when he's offering, he asks, "Can you give me a drink of water?" And we'll go into that next week. But what does he say next to the woman after she objects to the fact that he's Jewish and a rabbi? Why is he talking to her and all that? What does he say? Extraordinary thing. Anybody remember? What are we going to do? Okay. Well, he says, if you knew who you were talking to right now, you'd ask him for living water. You wouldn't be concerned with how come he's asking you for water and all that, because you would, if you knew who you were talking to, your vision of the possibilities would expand so greatly that you'd ask for living water. Okay. Now, also in John, well, so we have to realize, guess who's standing there in front of the paralytic saying, "Do you want to be well?" And the paralytic's saying, "I can't get to the water. I've got no person. I'm alone. No one sees me." And boy, is that a terrible poverty and an awful wound. Starts early in life. How many of you have ever seen the YouTube, the still face experiment. Psychology professor. Good for you. We know. All right, the rest of you need to see it. Look it up. The still face experiment, STILL. What this is a 1-year-old child securely attached, whose mother's playing with her, and they're attuned to one another. They're in sync, and they're enjoying it. And then they ask this woman to turn around for a second, fix her face, and come back like this. And no matter what the child does, just look like that. So it goes for 2 minutes. You can hardly stand it by the 2 minutes. The mother does this, and instantly, as soon as she turns around, within less than a second, you see the child's surprise in her eyes. She notices we're not attuned. And then the child goes through everything she knows how to do to get that mother to tune back in. She plays, she dances, she points, and then she screams. And then gradually she loses control of her body and just turns away and begins to sob in an agonizing way. Now this, in the last 20 years, studies in neurobiology show that the brain of us, which does 90% of its developing really outside the womb, is done mostly by that, by attunement. And that actually, if this doesn't happen in a dramatic way, there will be neurobiological damage to the brain, which will leave the child more susceptible to alcoholism, drug addiction, and anxiety disorders, ADD, all kinds of things. And actually, there's evidence that this happens in utero too. If the woman is stressed and worried constantly while carrying the child, it's passed down. Now, what is at the basis of this is to have someone who's attuned to. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be enough. Now, this is really important too, because you can be in a family where you say, oh, my parents love me, and they do. They provide and everything, but they're not attuned. Like that little child, the parents are busy. They're going here and there, and they really don't tune in and mirror the child in a way that the child is nourished and soothed and develops a neurobiological ability to maintain their equilibrium in their life later. So we're told this man had been paralyzed for 38 years, or I'll have to check that out. I don't know. They don't translate it as paralysis there. But in any case, they were blind, lame, paralyzed. These are homeless people we would think of often as derelicts. And we don't want to see them either because they disturb us. So it's hard to attune to someone that disturbs you because you're trying to get away from what is happening inside you, the disturbance. So now Jesus is the only lover of humankind. Here's the one who attunes to us more than anyone in the world. And he shows up at the sheep gate. Now, who can hear the sheep gate without hearing all the other things in John that says, I am the door of the sheep gate, Jesus says. He says, it comes right out and says it. I am the door of the sheep gate. I am the good shepherd. No one enters except through this door. So now we have this little story is getting really big. We have living water. We have the only lover of humankind, the shepherd of our souls and bodies, who is addressing this human being who has not felt like a human being because he's been invisible too often to too many. And he asks him, do you want to be well? So now, let's see, Amphilochius of Iconium. He's that one you don't hear of much, but he has an interesting comment. He says Jesus asked him this because he not only wanted to heal him, he wanted him to see how people had treated him. He wanted him to say, I don't have anybody after 38 years outside the temple who's noticed me enough to ever help me. That's an awful, awful predicament. So Jesus says, one word, rise. We can't hear that right after Pascha without hearing overtones of that. Rise. Pick up what you were laying on, this bed that you laid on for 38 years, and walk. Now, St. Augustine says, his view is that by saying, pick up your pallet and walk, he was saying, you've been on the end of being, needing people to pick you up and carry you. Don't know if they ever did. But now, it's going to be different. Now you are going to pick up this pallet and you'll be somebody who picks other people up. Because if you're given this life, you're going to be righted. No longer someone sitting around waiting to be noticed and given some help. You're going to be in a position where you will now have to decide, are you going to be someone for whom people are invisible? Or are you going to pick them up and help them get to the water? That's a wonderful frame too. St. John Chrysostom says, can you imagine, we'll use a modern word he doesn't use, but can you imagine the resilience, in one sense, of this person? For 38 years, nobody's helped him. They've treated him terrible, and he's never given up. He's still there. He's still hoping. He's still wanting to get to that water after 38 years of defeat. Now that's something only the Lord sees in the human heart, something that we can't overcome, that we've wrestled with for 68 years. And God says, I know. I've watched you wrestle. On this day, the Lord says, rise, as he will say to all of us, even if we don't know him, like this man didn't know who he was, didn't know anything about Jesus, didn't have any faith, anything else. We're all going to rise before the judgment where Christ will be attuned to us, and then that will read our hearts. And the question will be, what will we do when we have the attunement of the Son of God heart to heart in our face, face to face? Now something weird, but not weird because it happens over and over and over and over in the New Testament. We really have to pay attention to this. It's so obvious that we sometimes don't even see it. He gets noticed, but why? What does he get noticed for? He broke a rule. He picked his dead mat up on the Sabbath, but he was actually obeying the Son of God. But it was a little rule that was supposed to be, the rules of Israel were to help people come alive. But what happened was they kept being abused. And actually, it was these rules and the faith itself held by men in a certain way that executed Christ. So they're used against God. They're used against life. So here's God. He says, rise up, be alive. And the man who's got nobody, who's never been noticed, is noticed for the first time. And they say, you broke a rule today. Now maybe I don't want the authorities to tell me I broke a rule. What can I say? Well, it's interesting what he does. I don't know how long it took for him to go through that grilling. But of course, that's also a diagnosis of the Pharisees' mentality. If I can't see a 38-year paralyzed man who's now alive and rejoice, I have no joy for him. I have no interest. I have no surprise. I have no wonder. I have no life. All I can see is the rule that this living being broke. I am very, very paralyzed. I am very, very sick. I am very, very unattuned. I can only find a negative. Now, where does this man go? Anybody know? Where, Simon? You want to know, I think. If you want to know, he went to the temple. He went right into the temple after that incredible calling to the principal's office that he got. He went to the temple. Peter did the same thing, Simon. I'll go. So did Isaiah. Send me. It's a good sign. He went to the temple. He could have gone other places. It says something about him that he went to the temple. Now, we also want to understand that the Gospel of John is structured, as Father John Bear has pointed out in his wonderful study. It's structured around visits to Jerusalem, to the temple, because guess what? Jesus is the temple. What happens is the temple of stones gets replaced. It's torn to pieces, fulfilling the prophecy Jesus made that not one stone will be left upon another. The literal temple that everybody was saving, that was part of that whole use of the law that ended up crucifying the living God, was destroyed because it was passed into the living temple and the Spirit. So this man, he went to the temple and he encounters Christ again. And this time, I wish I could hear Jesus' voice when he said, "So, you're well. Go and sin no more so that nothing worse befalls you." Because part of me thinks if he knew about what the man had just been through, it might be like saying, "You're well. You see you're well now. Now go and live and be careful for the religious police because they're going to be watching you just like they're watching me." Maybe there was a little irony or humor. I don't know. But what I really hear in that is what he did with the woman caught in adultery. It's the same words, go and sin no more. But he never says it like the Pharisees do. He gives it when it can be heard by the heart as a benediction, as a joyful gift, because anyone who's been brought back to life, the woman was condemned, caught in the act of adultery. The men drug her into the public square, humiliating her. Don't know where the man went. Maybe he was part of it. Who knows? Caught in the act, the law says she should die by stoning. They're ready to do it. They say, "Jesus, should we do it?" They're really putting him on trial. He doesn't argue with them about what the law says. He just says, "Okay, whichever one of you is without sin, you be the first one to carry this out." And they drop their rocks, the oldest to the youngest. Then he says to her, who's coming out of shock, "Has anyone condemned you?" "No one, sir." "Neither do I." He's repairing the damage done by this humiliation and this exposure and this condemnation and judgment that is so destructive. And after she's recovered enough, he gives her a beautiful word. Go and sin no more. Go and live the life that your heart right now breathes and sees as the true life, the one you really want. Now you can see it because you're not being condemned. No one's poking their finger at you. You're not under threat of being exterminated because you made a mistake, because you were trying to survive, or because you were lonely, or because of God knows what we end up going to survive the fact that in some way many of us missed the attunement we needed for our brain to be perfectly healthy. Many of us go to things, all of us in one way or another, all of us go to something to soothe ourselves when we can't stand, when we can't get to the water. We don't need condemnation for this. What we need is understanding. We need to be free of this by someone looking into our eyes and saying, "What do you really want? Do you want life? Okay. Rise, be alive. And maybe then we go to the temple. And maybe then in the temple, the beautiful temple, we hear Christ now, only now, after confession and absolution, after coming alive, after healing, he says to us, follow me. Obey the commandments. They're life. They're light unto your feet. I am the way, the truth, and the life, and there is no life apart from me. This is our joy. We have it together. We live together with forgiveness of one another, trying to, in a different take on the old thing in the military, but I'm not watching you to catch you. I want to notice you. From me to you. As Christ notices us. May God help us do this and save us.